Walt Disney Corporation is celebrating its 100th birthday all year in 2023. That combined with today marking 68 years of Disneyland being in business makes this the perfect time to examine a game that pays tribute to the company's mascot. Sure, there have been plenty of video games based on various Disney properties over the years, but none take as deep of a dive into the history of Mickey Mouse and other characters Walt created, quite like Epic Mickey for the Wii. In a story at least partially based on The Sorcerer's Apprentice, Mickey stumbles into the Sorcerer's studio and discovers a model of a world that looks similar to Disneyland. When the curious mouse starts playing with a magic paintbrush which created the world, he accidentally creates a dark monster called the Blot. When Mickey tries to erase his mistake, he then accidentally gives the Blot all the power he needs to go into the world of forgotten Disney characters and take it over using paint thinner and his own evil ink-made minions. Now it's all up to Mickey to go into the world to properly fix his mistake and save this forgotten magic kingdom. Much like classic Disney stories, this one presents a simple and cartoony premise that actually makes good use of real-world issues, by which I mean cleaning up after your own messes no matter how difficult they may be, facing things that are scary, and finding a greater appreciation for those who haven't gotten to share in any good fortune you've had. It's just that Epic Mickey goes into all this in a very literal sense, which works for a video game. As a 2010 3D platformer on the non-HD Wii, Epic Mickey actually looks pretty good. It sells itself as a living, breathing cartoon world even with the polish it may lack, but perhaps the lack of HD polish and the flat textures and somewhat blocky environments actually work in the game's favor. After all, this is a world of the forgotten that is being plagued by an evil force that the residents aren't able to comprehend. So it makes sense why it would have some color in it, but not be quite so bright, shiny, or colorful as the real theme park that's enjoyed mainstream popularity for almost 70 years. So looking at it that way, as long as the frame rate stays consistent, which thankfully it does, the graphics do exactly what they need to do. It's really the art style that takes more of the focus, which is always a good thing for anything Disney. When it comes to audio, Epic Mickey feels like it took notes from late 90s action-adventure platformers. The sound effects are done in a cartoony way which fits in with the overall look and tone of the game. The same can be said for the music. It has that Disney charm to it, but with a touch of darkness. In many ways, it feels like a Disney cartoon directed by Tim Burton. That sort of weird twist to something that's still very Disney. In terms of voice acting, it's down to grunts, blurbs, and screams, but done in a way that feels familiar with Disney characters you know, including Mickey himself. This is what I mean by that late 90s inspiration. It could have worked well with full voice acting, but this approach of grunts and subtitles actually works for this game paying homage to Mickey's roots from the old days of Disney cartoons. It's explained in the story that this world is inspired by Disneyland, but because it's a land of forgotten characters made by the original forgotten character, it didn't turn out as impressive or as happy as the actual theme park. The developers did a great job with how they handled this because Wasteland, as it's called, really feels like a demented version of Disneyland. You have worlds modeled after Small World, Tomorrowland, the Pirates of the Caribbean ride, and Mickey's Toontown, among others. But these normally happy places have been turned into living cartoon nightmares. It's brilliant how the game works these designs in with very subtle and meta commentary on Mickey's popularity and the company that created this whole universe. Of course, symbolism and meta commentary only get you so far as a video game if your mechanics aren't up to snuff. So let's see how good they are. Well, frankly, the 3D platforming is actually pretty good. It makes clever use of various things as platforms, and Mickey himself is pretty good at jumping. But a key component of all the mechanics, platforming included, is Mickey's paintbrush. With the B button you can spray paint, and with the Z button you spray paint thinner. A very literal sense of creation versus destruction. The brush is used for pretty much every area: combat, exploration, puzzle solving, and platforming. As you have to sometimes paint transparent stuff into existence so you can jump on it, or start and stop gears to get spinning platforms to stop at the right spot. It's no secret that I've played a lot of 3D platformers in my time, but I've never played one that had such an interesting twist to the platforming with a mechanic like this. But the puzzle solving and combat are engaging both with and without the brush. Puzzle solving in Epic Mickey really encourages you to explore your surroundings and try new things, like seeing if you could dissolve a wall or floorboard to find an important item. These are items you're tasked with finding by the citizens of Wasteland in order to progress bit by bit. Other platformers have such similar challenges. But while I appreciate that a lot of Mickey's tasks are accomplished in this method of exploring and experimenting through these creative worlds, some of the tasks drag on to the point where they feel more like busy work. I did find myself a few times saying to my TV, "Get the flowers yourself! I've got paint monsters to fight!" But speaking of fighting, combat here is simple, yet strategic. This is because you have your paint, your thinner, and your spin attack. A common thing to do is to stun an enemy with a spin attack before taking him out with thinner, or you can get creative and just spin attack someone into a river of paint thinner, or drop them by dissolving the floor beneath their feet. That last part's pretty cool, not gonna lie. But the strategy is also that you have to choose between destroying each one with the methods I just described, or turning them to your side with paint. This is not only an interesting morality plotline, but it's a mechanic that also affects things that happen in the story, which in turn grant you different rewards. This may not apply to all enemy types, as some of them you can only dissolve with paint thinner, but it certainly applies to the boss fights, which are all exciting but thankfully not too difficult for younger players. Now, as you warp from one world to another, you'll have to play through these 2D levels. It's a simple objective of getting from one side to another and warping through the projector screen, but what I thought was impressive was how the 2D platforming challenges were all so well designed around Mickey's vintage cartoon shorts. Now, feelings on the length of these mini levels depends on how you feel about 2D platformers. I thought them being short meant that they never overstayed their welcome, and they were just long enough to mix things up in gameplay. But big 2D platformer fans will undoubtedly feel let down by how quickly these segments end. But what I did find annoying was the camera. The only way to control the camera is to move it right behind you with the C button, but in some specific parts of a level the camera would stay static on its own and the C button would do nothing. The design of the camera makes exploration, platforming, and sometimes combat more difficult than they need to be. There's a lot of good qualities to this game, especially for Disney fans, but it's a shame that the camera kinda holds it back. Epic Mickey goes for really cheap these days. On average, you can find it online for $5, $4, or even $3. I actually got my copy for $1 at GameStop. While it's certainly not a perfect game, this will entertain big-time Disney fans, at least enough to justify finding a copy for such a low price. Well, that's my review of Epic Mickey for the Wii. To help me produce more videos like this, please support my Patreon page. Special thanks to my current patrons here. Remember that supporting my Patreon gets your name in the credits and access to my flagship videos a full day early. Also be sure to check out my previous reviews of Mickey's Speedway USA for the N64 and A Hat in Time for the Switch. See you all next time!